Good morning. Happy Valentine's Day. Welcome to our IHE Symposium. My name is Siraj, and I'm the coordinator here at the Utah Personnel Development Center. Lowell Oswald, our director's right here. We've got some of our specialists around here as well, some in the back and so forth. We've got Glenna Gallo here as well, our our State Director of Special Education. And we welcome all those of you, especially that are from our institutions of higher education. Thank you so much for being with us. Let's give them a hand. We appreciate you being here. We've got quite an exciting agenda. There was an agenda up here that outlines what we're going to do today. I'd like to just start off by having a nice welcome for all of you. Again, thank you for being here. We're going to start off with Becky Unker, who's going to talk about a conference this summer, and then we'll have Glenna Gallo, who's our state director, to talk to us about a few things, and then I'll go ahead and introduce our panel. So, Becky.
Thank you so much. We are happy to announce our second MTSS conference this summer. It's June 18th and 19th at the Davis Conference Center. We have keynote speakers, Dr. George Sagai, Dr. Brad Witzel. Brad was with us last year, Dr. Ron Zur, and Dr. Kathleen Brown. So we're excited to have those speakers with us. Registration is open now. These were over at the table, so there's a website that you can go to that. And also on the same page, we're putting out the call for proposals to speak at the conference. So if you know of anybody or anybody in your districts that are doing great things and want to share with us, please pass their name along and have them sign up. So thank you very much.
Dr. Gallo.
Good morning. I'm Glenna Gallo, no doctorate. And especially in front of this panel, I do not want a fake doctorate attached to my name. Thank you very much for coming to the symposium. I'm very excited about it for a couple of reasons. One of the things is that we've really been working hard at the State Office of Education and with our special ed directors at building collaboration between general ed and special ed. One of the things that we've been doing is we've actually formed a partnership at the state office between special education, teaching and learning, and the federal programs, especially Title I, Title III, maybe Title II. We'll see if they're in there. Anyway, we've moved over the SPDEG project, the UMTSS project, which was housed here at the UPDC, is now housed at the State Office of Education, and there are grant personnel across all three of those departments, so that we can really roll out a statewide plan of tiered instruction and support, and really look at the theme of effective core instruction for all students. We've been talking with special education teachers and directors about the fact that specialized instruction is in addition to core instruction, not in place of core instruction. And so we're very excited to hear from you what you're doing in the pre-service arena around that will support those efforts that we have statewide. The second thing that I'd like to talk about is we discussed state priorities for special ed yesterday, and we have the same priorities that we've had for 3 years in 2 areas. We have a priority around preschool, looking at LRE and effective instruction in preschool for students with disabilities. We have a priority around school to post-school transition for students ages 14 and up, looking at paying special attention to post-secondary education, because that is an area that we have been losing students to and have been decreasing our students with disabilities who are going on to post-secondary education. And then our third priority had been in the area of math instruction, good core math instruction. And yesterday in a discussion with special ed directors, we changed that third priority area to effective core instruction in the area of numeracy and literacy. All of those decisions were made based on state data, which I could spend a lot of time on, but I'll tell you what, they're based on data, and if you'd like to see the data, I'm happy to share it with you. It's posted online. And so We're very excited about the MTSS project, the conference that will be happening this summer, and that collaboration between all three of those departments at the state office, of which the superintendent is in tremendous support of. With that, I'm going to turn this back to Suraj. Thank you very much for coming and participating in this discussion today.
Thank you, Glenna. It was a great meeting yesterday, and it's wonderful to see the cooperation and the coordination of efforts that we have here in Utah. It's my honor to introduce our panel. Just to let you know, these are very busy people, but I was very impressed that when I emailed them, just like I did, and they all got back to me. So maybe you'll regret that after the hour's over, but I hope not. We value what each of you do at your distinguished institutions. We know that it makes a difference for our state to have the quality of teachers coming into the field of education. It makes it really is, when all is said and done, about student achievement and how we can make a greater difference there.
We have a floral delivery. Okay, somebody has a really thoughtful, significant other. Michelle Tanner, is that right?
My husband is out of town in Arizona taking care of his mother who has cancer, and he always gives me flowers.
Okay, guys, you all saw it.
Shannon, step up.
My husband didn't wake up and say,
So I'm going to give the time to our distinguished panel. We're going to start off with Noah Carter and invite each of them to introduce themselves, tell a little bit about what they do, share some information regarding the number of individuals that are actually graduating from their institution in the field of education, both general ed, special ed, and ed leadership. And then they're going to address an essential question. The essential question is on your agenda, but I'll quickly read it. How is your College of Education enhancing the preparation of general educators and using evidence-based practices to support students with disabilities in achieving college and career-ready standards? Again, we appreciate your preparation and being here. And we've got a few mics, and Noah, go ahead and get started. I think it turns on.
Did I get it? Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Noelle Carter from Western Governors University, and I am the Program Development Manager, which is a title that's a little bit unusual for an educational institution. It's usually a business title. But what I do is I manage the programs and the courses for the Teachers College. Because we are an online university, then I can monitor all those programs, and we really have a systemic way of setting course content and procedures, and so I'm in charge of that. And because Western Governors is an online university, well, first of all, let me tell you, it has interesting challenges, but then also some interesting benefits. And one is that the college has been growing tremendously over the last few years. So the enrollment in the college as a whole is up to over 43,000 students, and graduates now over 17,000 per year, and about a third of that is in the Teachers College in different educators with degrees in regular ed, special ed, ed leadership, English language learning, and then different middle and secondary certifications also in math and science. And one of the things that we're allowed to do because of our model, it's a disaggregated model, which means that we have professors that are course mentors that really focus on the instruction of the course, but they have a course that's already set. So we get together a collection of special experts on the subject from local or around the nation. We borrow heavily from other universities with maybe two, and really bring in those. We identify first the competencies of the course, what someone who graduates from that course really needs to be able to know and also do. We need to have measurable outcomes, right? And so then that way we can really align our curriculum very well. And what that means is that because I manage lots of different programs, that as we update our special ed content, then I can go back to ed leadership and regular ed and say, now this terminology needs to be updated across the board, and these practices need to be updated, these sources, all together. And so then I can talk to the mentors in the different departments and make sure that that information is consistent and correct, so the students are getting, you know, the repetitions they need instead of confusion as they go through and hear different things. One of the other things that it allows us to do is to be able to, I think, really practice some good teaching practices ourselves, because we're able to, with online courses, you know, have really clear, measurable objectives, and then target our direct instruction to that. And they do that through the normal way that you would with having sometimes e-text, sometimes interactive courseware when we find it, and vendors are becoming better all the time at producing interactive courseware that makes a more engaging experience, a memorable experience for students. But then we also get to include a step that sometimes normal universities don't get to do that I think is really exciting, which is having a lot of integrated videos into our content so that they can see modeling of those correct teaching practices that we want our students who become teachers to be able to know. And they get to watch those, and they'll watch, you know, over 100 hours of modeling of good practices. And they'll be able to reflect on those and do assignments connected to those before they go out and then observe and then do their student teaching. So then when they go out in the schools, then what they're seeing they can make sense of, and they can be a little bit better judges themselves of evaluating what they see. So I think that's a real strength that our online model has. And then, of course, we need to have all the good content and up to date. And I think it's important whether you're, you know, the question talks about general educators, but of course that means your classroom teachers who need to be able to know about, you know, accommodations and being good members of an IEP and knowing legal practices and things like that. But I think it also, they have to know about just a general attitude. I think that all needs to roll up into an attitude of our classrooms are not, you know, everybody is this except for a few who are different. It's all kids are really different in lots of different ways, and we need to be able to teach our teachers to say, it's not this kind of kid and this kind of kid, they're kids. And we need to be able to adapt and individualize for this individual, whatever his or her strengths and needs are, to not, you know, so to really focus the whole program on moving to a student-centered model and removing all traces we can of any kind of deficit model. I think is really important. And not just for the regular ed teachers, but then also for the administrators as well, so in the ed leadership programs, to make sure that they don't just know about legal practices they have to do and also about funding sources and how to manage that, but that they get practice writing lesson plans as well that have accommodations for diverse learners of whatever type, and that they get to do some observations as well. And they also get that modeling of how an administrator can support teachers in good practices and can support a diverse community in their school. Because sometimes when they go out to do their field experiences, they'll say, well, I learned all this stuff in my courses, but I'm not really seeing the principal that I'm working with do that, or my school doesn't really do that. And so then they can come back and talk to their course mentor and say, there's a discrepancy between what I saw modeled and what I saw practiced. Now help me understand that so that I can go out myself and do what's good rather than just what I saw in the field sometimes. So I think that having a unified approach that really focuses on how can we as a university do what's best for our students so that they can go out and do what's best for their students.
My name is Stan Harward. I'm Associate Dean in the School of Education at Utah Valley University. All of you are aware that we're a fairly new university. We've grown very, very quickly. I think there are up to 32,000 students in the university. They have expecting to go to 40,000. The change in LDS missions probably hit us harder than many places across the state. So we've dropped down, and on our College of Education we've dropped down too, because a lot of our young women that are going into our program are going on the LDS missions. But we have we graduate about 200 elementary education majors each year and about 200 secondary majors each year. So we have grown in that program pretty quickly. We do not have a special education program, although we're under quite a bit of, a lot of people are asking why we don't. So I think we're to the point to really take a serious look at that. But we have a Master's of Education program. We do not have an Ed Leadership program. I was looking through some of our courses to maybe answer the question of how do we prepare our students, what kind of experience do they get in working with special populations and helping all students succeed. We have a EDSP 3400 course that all elementary and secondary education majors take. Program students. It introduces them to many different types of learning disabilities, ADHD, emotional and behavior disorders, autism, hearing and vision impaired, Tourette's and communication disorders, and then they learn ways to accommodate instruction for those students. They also spend, in that course, they spend 10 hours shadowing a special education teacher and working directly, doing aid work and helping them. They learn about IEPs and how special education educators work with classroom teachers. We also have an educational psychology course that covers all of our students take. They learn about group differences and individual differences. Again, it sort of reinforces. They have a course that I think is very strong. It's called a differentiation course. And in this course, they learn how to differentiate instruction. And they tie it into literacy and math and other things for children. And they differentiate content, the environment, the processes, and the products according to their interests, children's interests and learning profiles and their readiness to learn. So I think that really helps them work with diverse children, diverse populations and strengths and so forth. The idea is to create different pathways to the same objectives. So I think our idea is, how do you help all students succeed, and especially in our world today, to be college and career ready. And so that is an emphasis, I believe, that we try to take with our students. The other courses, we have multicultural courses, ESL, to work with those students that are second language learners. I think most of our courses include some way of helping them adapt instruction for those students that need maybe a little higher level of support. I know in our literacy courses, we work with them a fair amount of time in different assessments to screen and diagnose, to monitor progress, and to understand outcomes. In math, we do the same thing to help them adjust instruction and help students succeed. Our students spend a fair amount of time in clinical work. We struggle a little bit with our secondary teachers to get them out, but especially our elementary teachers spend And every single semester they spend time out in the field with specific assignments to work with small groups and individual children, especially those that are struggling. We really push the Utah Core, which of course is designed to help students be career and college ready in reading and language arts and in math. So those are some of the things that we try to do with our students.
I'm Martha Deaver. I'm Associate Dean of the College of Education and Human Services at Utah State University. And I'm also department head at the School of Teacher Education and Leadership. And 99% of what I do is oversee the School of Teacher Education and Leadership, which houses early childhood, elementary, secondary, and administrative licensure. Special ed is technically under that umbrella, but I don't oversee them. Ben does that. The other 1% of my time is spent representing the dean, which is what I'm doing today. Because what we're doing today is more, down my alley than hers. So we graduate across early childhood, elementary, secondary, special ed, roughly 500 students, probably a little more every year. We too have been hit a little with the LDS admission fee change, but we seem to be surviving that pretty well. We graduated another probably 40 students out of our ASC program. So our students early in their programs take an upper division special education course as well as a foundations course, where they look theoretically and conceptually at working with children in all areas of difference, including children with special needs. After that, our programs are heavily field-based, so that they get into methods, lots of practicum, where then their work is more applied. So all of those practicum experiences have courses where students spend time with a mentor teacher, they reflect on, talk about, learn about how teachers adjust for individual differences. Some of the more specific things, all of our students take an assessment and differentiation course where they learn to tie formative and summative assessment to pedagogy and curriculum differentiation. Do a lot of case study method where they work with hypothetical groups of students. They're also at the same time doing practicum and observing those things. A couple things that I think that we have that are really strong that I want to mention. I could take hours, I'm sure, but our reading program for elementary and early childhood students has 2 courses. The first course they learn about Tier 1 instruction. The second course they learn about Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction. They can, it's not required, and we don't have enough room for everyone, but they can take a course in our reading clinic, where they actually go in using a particular program and learn about and implement Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction with children in the clinic. We also have a math clinic where they can observe and work with children who are struggling in math. So those are some of the more specific ways that we help our students understand how to work with children with special needs and differentiate curriculum. We also have something that is fairly unique. We have a 5,000 level literacy endorsement that's different than our 4,000 level courses or our 6,000 level courses, in that those courses are all geared towards a K-12 audience. So our secondary majors can take that as a teaching minor, and we do still require teaching minor. I think we're the only ones in Utah who do. They can take it as a minor, they can take it as an endorsement. Practicing teachers can take it as an endorsement. And what it does is it helps teachers in middle school and high school to work with struggling readers in ways that they can help them become more proficient readers. So that's available. It's actually available online as well. So it's we did that to have easy and broad access.
I'm Tina Dykes. I'm a new associate dean in the School of Education at BYU, and so I don't really know what I'm doing. And I don't think I'm the right person to be up here, but our dean sent me here because I know special ed. I am the dean over graduate studies, so I don't know a whole lot about our undergraduate programs and accreditation and all that they're doing right now. But from what I've gathered, this is what I will share with you. What is unique about BYU is we've got, for the past 30 years, a BYU public school partnership with Jordan, Alpine, Nebo, Wasatch, and Provo school districts. That is really quite robust because we meet monthly, at least with elementary and secondary ed, with the administrators of those districts and find out what the problems are that BYU could help with. So that serves about a third of the state's children. About 180,000 students are being served in those districts. So the influence is quite broad. So we meet monthly. Special ed, I think, meets maybe every 2 months, every 3 months, because our problems are not nearly as great. Right, Gordon? Gordon is our new coordinator over special education. So that brings us a lot of strength to find out what the issues are. As a matter of fact, just recently they talked to Gordon, and the principals and administrators said, we really need more help when they are student teaching, particularly for the secondary ed teachers. And so we are designing new programs, new ways to get to the student teachers, particularly in secondary ed, where special ed faculty will do Q&As with them, be there for them to say, remember that intro to special ed class that you took? Remember what the IEP is all about? This is what we need to do. And so we're doing things in the field. Ours is a very heavily field-based program as well, starting them really early into the schools and cohorting them so they are with their peers and learning from mentor teachers who are masters in their fields. Something's really interesting too that we do in elementary, early childhood, and secondary ed. Instead of getting a professor to teach the courses, they work with the school districts and get liaisons and facilitators, so they are real teachers, in the trench teachers who teach the courses instead of a professor from the ivory tower, and we don't know what we're doing. So they are on leave for 3, maybe 5, I don't know, those of you from the districts know better than I do, 3 or 4 years that teach at the university, teach the courses and collaborate with the professors. So it's rejuvenating for the professors. It feels real to the students, and they're doing work in those schools where they have those liaisons and facilitators. So I really like that model for elementary and secondary ed. I forgot to mention, we graduate anywhere from 400 to 500 students in elementary, early childhood, and special ed, and speech pathology every year, undergraduates. I'm not sure about secondary ed because they usually graduate through their majors, but it's a few hundred as well. So, and a lot of them do stay in Utah. They don't all get married, have babies, and leave. Some of them go on missions. Those are a few things that we're doing. What's really been exciting lately is we have more professors in our teacher education program, elementary, early childhood, and secondary ed, who have more special ed background, and so they are able to teach MTSS from their perspective rather than from a special ed perspective. I'm sure the rest of you know that it sounds different when it comes from someone from a professor from a different department. So it's really nice that we've got professors who have special ed background or principals who have special ed background and who are teaching it to their students, not our students, so that we are bridging that gap more at BYU. I also actually met with one of the counselors through our counseling center for BYU students and said, what are you doing? What can we be doing in the schools to help kids get into college better and to be successful in college better? He said he runs social skills groups for the BYU students who are on the autism spectrum. I said, okay, what are you really finding from these students? He said, anxiety. They are not using problem-solving methods very well to prevent the shutdown that they get when they have too many assignments, too many courses, too much going on. If we, K through 12, could prepare them, not necessarily academically, he says, academically they're doing fine, these ASD groups. But it's the anxiety and problem solving, figuring out how to not catastrophize everything we really need to do a better job with social skills instruction, is what I heard from him. I asked about autism just because I knew he was doing those groups. I'm sure there are a lot of other things that we could be doing. What did I'm sure I forgot others. We have the same kind of courses as everybody else does. So we're doing what we can to help out our kids in the state of Utah.
I'm Deb Hill. I'm from Southern Utah University. I'm the dean. We're not thousands of students. We're very small. We're about 8,000 in the entire college. Don't want to grow too big. Don't want to be out of that. We're in a different league on that one. We graduate about 200 educators at the undergrad level, and that would be early childhood, elementary, secondary, and we're different. If you're going to license in special ed, you are also going to license in either elementary, early childhood, or secondary. So all of our students who graduate with a special education license also license in another area so that they're highly qualified. That's one of the reasons why we do that. So in that sense, in every course that we have, we've got those students embedded. They're taking the same courses as everybody else. The professors are teaching together. My faculty is a very diverse faculty. They are across the board. Several of them have degrees in special education, either at the master's level or the doctoral level. And they're teaching all those courses. So it's completely embedded. It's pervasive. That kind of sounds bad, doesn't it? It's embedded. They're in bed together. We have 100 graduates at the MED level, and then we have about 100 at the administrative level. The administrative level is heavy on principals and 2 superintendents who are over that teach it, that have degrees in special ed. So they are, what we have seen is that we really need to strengthen the understanding of special ed law. So we're pushing very hard at our administrative level to get that in. This admin licensure graduates are embedded with the master's school law, so they're shared. Everybody, there's not this secret that teachers have one kind of school law and administrators have another. We don't believe that. School law is school law, so everybody gets the same. We have preschool, so our religion, and it's housed in public ed, so we're in there. Our students have that opportunity. Our elementary students get about 200 hours of practicum the semester before they even student teach, which is a real high number. They spend the morning on campus in a coursework, and in the afternoon they're in a school for the rest of the day. We go into schools 3 times during each semester, and we actually take over the school and release the faculty for professional development where they're super subs. So my students have 3 weeks in different schools. Last week they were in a charter school in St. George. It's a win-win for us. We go in, those teachers are released for professional development. We went in and did STEAM coursework, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So they had a week of STEAM courses, and that's our gift. It's a trade-off. It's kind of fun. We have endorsements at the secondary level. I mean, at the graduate level, all of them with the state, happy with the reading. We do have a graduate level for special ed license, which is different, and that was a request coming out of our school districts to the south. They would have a highly qualified secondary teacher in math. They wanted someone who had SPED. So we now have an online hybrid SPED class that we offer in the summer to support professional teachers to come back and get their special ed endorsement. Well, I mean, it's not endorsement, it's a license. Working with the college, we do work with the university with the student support services with their ASD students. What we do is we also bring students who are identified within the school system. We bring them on campus for events, and so our students to get them comfortable with being on a college and moving about the college, walking about the college. We have a study group, a book study group, and we buy the pizza and help socialize. And it's a lot of fun. That one's good. We start with the 2000, which is a GE class, bringing in, because we know that parents, this is a class that's not required for educators, but it's a general ed course. We want everyone is going to be living near a school. We want them to understand what schools are all about. So it's called Exploring Education in Society. We right there begin talking about meeting the diverse needs of students across the board. We have teaching in a diverse society or diverse cultures. We have, and I'm not saying these correct, professional instruction, planning, curriculum development that gets down to IPs and diversity, educating the diverse population, foundations. Every student is in a Foundations of Special Education. That's part of one of our core courses. It's embedded. So I guess I'm done.
Hi, I'm Bob Shaw, the Dean of the School of Education at Westminster College. We're a lot smaller than Southern Utah. We have 2,000 students total. We graduate about 100 students in education each year. That's roughly 30 or so secondary, about 50 elementary, and about 20 special ed. We're kind of unusual in the state that 2/3 of our initial licensed students are actually master's students, they're graduate students. Only about 1/3 of our teacher ed folks are undergraduates. The teacher ed undergraduate population is heavily non-traditional. The average age is about 27 of our undergraduates. The average age of our MATs is even higher, about 30 or so. We have a lot of students in the MAT program who graduated last week from the college, and we have a lot of students who graduated 25 years ago. And they have been doing everything from being a baker to a ballet dancer to we've had 3 attorneys go through the program. And people decide at some point to change their careers and become a teacher. And so it's kind of an interesting mix. Most of our special ed students are also general ed. We had 2 or 3 each year who graduate only in special ed. But most of them are dual. Both programs, the undergraduate and graduate programs, are based on a funds of knowledge model. Luis Moll at Arizona State and Norma Gonzalez, who at the time was here at the University of Utah, developed this idea that essentially every kid comes to you knowing stuff. And how can you teach in such a way that you can build on that stuff? And that cuts across all of our programs, special ed and secondary and elementary as well. All students do take, of course, a introduction to special ed course, the undergraduates and the graduate students. It's based on the CEC, the Council of Exceptional Children's Professional Practice Standards. And then that's played out through the rest of the program. I think the students, by the time they graduate, are very tired of the word differentiation. It is true in all our courses, all the methods courses, and expect them to write their lesson plans in such a way that they demonstrate they know what that means and how to implement it in their subject area. When they do their student teaching, they have to do a final presentation of the in-student teaching based on a teacher work sample of about a 2-week unit. And one of the questions we ask them is, how did you deal with the diversity in your class? So that we cut that across all the different levels of the program, the introduction, the methods courses, and the student teaching. Like Southern Utah, our students are out in schools a lot. The very first course has mountain schools, and that's true for secondary as well as for elementary. So they're in a number of schools before they even student teach. And one of the benefits of that is they know what they do well, what they don't do well by the time they get there. So they actually are pretty good self-mentors. To work along with their own mentor to say, here's what I need help with. And of course, so some of the concepts we touch on are universal design for learning. We want to make sure they can teach in such a way that everybody can benefit, because as several people have said, everybody there is different. And you want to teach in such a way that different folks can relate to that. Obviously, we cover RTI, and all the core concepts of special ed. When they get out, a fair number of them go into special ed, a fair number of them go into general ed. But I think either way, they're well prepared to teach with the students that they have. Thanks. Oh, I'm sorry. I did want to say one more thing. Terrible. This is my last year as Dean of the School of Education. I'm happy to say that Peter Engel, who's a special ed professor, is taking over as interim dean for the next 2 years. So you'll have Peter here next year.
Okay, hi, I am Fran Butler from Weber State University, and I'm the Director of the Special Education Programs at Weber State. And our Dean asked me to come and represent him today, so I'm very honored to do that. Weber State graduates approximately 400 students per year in elementary, secondary, and special education. We don't have ed leadership. At least half of those students are elementary ed majors, with about 50 or so special ed, and probably another 50 to 70 secondary ed teachers. Our program is a little bit different than some of the other larger universities because we have one teacher education department, and special education is embedded within the teacher education department. So I direct a portion of that. But all of our faculty are on the same floor. We all collaborate together extensively. Something that was a little bit unique about us is that about 2 years ago, our provost, who is an economics professor, decided that he had some money available, and he gave it to our dean to allow a self-study that is not related to accreditation. Imagine that. So we did something called Google Teacher Education, and we divided ourselves up into faculty groups across disciplines, across faculty, staff, everybody, and we took a look at every aspect of teacher education at Weber State University, including student support in our programs, including teaching, including everything. So our staff is also involved with that. And we came up with a lot of good ideas. We had one group that went out to various universities and studied their programs. And so what it resulted in, to make a long story short, and we all got paid for that, by the way, with that money that the provost gave us. So that was a pretty nice bonus too. Not nearly as much as the time we put into it, but that was still nice. Anyway, so we did a complete revamp of our elementary and special education programs. And this year is the first year that it's fully in implementation. And so what's happened is that all of our elementary and special education students take the same level 1 coursework, with the exception that special education majors take an extra course in special education law, and the early childhood majors take a different course in early childhood education, which also touches on diversity and special education. So it's very interesting that all of our students take the same early literacy course together in level 1. They take the same differentiation and collaboration course in level 1. They take the same educational psychology course in level 1. And the interesting feedback that we've gotten so far, as I said, this is our first year. Some of our special education majors have come to me and said, you know, why are we in that early literacy course? They don't talk about special ed. And I have to remind them that every child starts out in general education, and so we need to know where they're coming from. So that's kind of an eye-opener for our students. It's also been good for the elementary faculty and students as well, because our license is K through 12. And they've been concentrating on K through 6 forever and ever and ever. So now to bring the concepts of how does early literacy really impact older struggling readers, and what does an early K through 3 teacher need to do to improve outcomes later on, is something that they had known, but they hadn't really put into practice before, and now they do. So we're kind of excited about that. All of our students take a support course, which is human exceptionality. So students at Weber State in teacher education take 2 courses that are special education, quote-unquote, courses. Elementary and special ed students take that. Our secondary colleagues train their students in their disciplines, and we only get them for 1 semester of coursework and then 1 semester of student teaching. So we can't do quite as much with the secondary teaching, but we're still working on that. Let me see, what else do we do? The coursework that we have is basically the same as everyone else has mentioned. There's very heavy field work. Again, we have graded practica starting in level 1, and even in their Education 1010 class, which is a support class that all students take, they are out in the schools for that as well. So up until student teaching, I'm just trying to think. I know level 2 has 54 hours of field work. Level 3 has more than that, and then student teaching, of course, student teaching. Level 1, since that's the integrated level, students, we encourage our special education majors to go out to be in the elementary schools during that time so they can get that perspective. And we encourage our elementary majors to spend time in the resource classroom during that integrated level. So that's been very helpful too. Am I leaving anything out, Pat and Bonnie? Two of my new faculty just joined me today, so I'm excited that they're here. And so they don't know what the old program was like, but we're happy to have. We hired 3 new faculty members in special education last year, so we're excited about that. But our general education teachers, our faculty are very, very accommodating with us. We meet regularly as faculty, and we talk about problems that all of our students have across elementary, secondary, and special education.
I'm Mary Burbank from the College of Education at the U. I work in the Urban Institute for Teacher Ed, and I'm here with Dr. Rob O'Neill from the Department of Special Education. I'm here on behalf of Dr. Maria Franquise, who's the new Dean of the College of Education. She's at a conference today, so she's not able to join us. But like our esteemed colleagues from across the state, we're all bound by accreditation requirements, as I know you all experience in your work. And for the most part, those requirements have provided some structures in terms of coursework and field-based experiences that are very similar, so I won't go over a listing of those because we all adhere to similar standards. But one of the opportunities we've had at U that started in 2008 was a restructuring of our licensure program. And I use the word program purposefully because we view teacher preparation across K-12 as a collaborative effort where we're preparing all teachers to work with all students. And at the time, prior to 2008, there was a very siloed approach to teacher ed. Special educators worked in one section of the building, elementary ed, and then secondary, they were somewhere else on campus. Of our 200 students per year who graduate across K-12 programs, they're now taking similar coursework. They're also doing similar field experiences as a way of helping them understand inclusion because of the program they've been in and the experiences they've had working with a range of teachers. So in addition to this common set of courses they take, they're also in classrooms, similar to our colleagues across the state, prior to student teaching and then also within their student teaching experience. But there's also an element that is critical to the preparation, and that's feedback from schools, working collaboratively with teachers and hearing from schools about where we need to better prepare folks. So it is a very reciprocal process. Data-based decision-making is critical to how our teachers are prepared. They take specific classes that address data assessment and interpretations of data. And that becomes particularly critical and aligns with our mission when you look at understanding differences between ability, differences between language, differences between culture, and how that impacts student performance. So among the courses students take are those in instruction behavior support, assessment for linguistically diverse students, principles of assessment. But then we also ask them to produce analyses based on the data they gain and understanding differences in ability, differences in language ability. So action research, video analyses, case studies, etc. are part of the ways they then make differentiations based on the data that they gather from their own practice and observations in classrooms and schools. Reading coursework, math coursework aligns with clinic work, but also in collaboration with the College of Science, Department of Mathematics. All of our students in the K-12 emphasis areas, elementary, secondary, mild, moderate, and severe, in those specialization areas all receive endorsements working with English language learners. And so they understand those very nuanced and well-defined differences that really impact how you provide instruction based on individual needs.
Thanks, Mary. I just wanted to add a couple of comments. First of all, I wanted to just recognize, a lot of you know Mike Hardman. He's the former dean of our college, and he was really the one who helped spearhead a lot of this movement towards coming up with a more common core of stuff across regular and special ed. Another aspect that has been challenging but also lots of fun is for our special ed faculty to have courses now where they've got elementary, secondary, and special ed students in those courses, and having to try to figure out how do we take these concepts and ideas and strategies and make them relevant and applicable across that range of individuals and the kinds of things that they're going to encounter as part of the process. So, as Mary said, it's been ongoing for several years now, and I think it's just really been a great experience to have that sort of integration and have that sort of collaboration across the programs. So, and the last thing I just wanted to mention is we're involved, due to the efforts of Glenna and Lowell and some other folks, we're involved in a project with the Cedar Center out of Florida, and a number of people in the room are involved in that as well, where we're looking to try to further integrate efforts across regular ed, special ed, and ed leadership, which is something that I think we still have a lot of opportunity to have an impact on. So we're excited about that as well.
Give him a hand. We will take some questions that you have, but let me just, maybe as we're segueing to this, I want to recognize Caitlin Barrington from Westminster College won gold.
That's right, yes.
Earlier this week.
We also have a silver and another gold coming up. So.
That's great. As a matter of fact, I actually did some research and I found out that the university, Westminster College actually, has most athletes that are at the games right now from Utah attend Westminster College.
Well, our president.
Do you have a program in that? I wonder.
No, we do, kind of, but our president's especially pleased that the other college that is not quite as many as Duke University, Dartmouth University. So he's quite pleased that we're named in the same sentence as Dartmouth.
That's fantastic. We do appreciate the responses that you've shared, very comprehensive and very informing. What questions do you have? And also, Tom, those that are online, if they have questions, we have a few minutes to take some questions.
So, do you require a behavior management course in your
general education?
Thank you.
Who would like to?
We can just ask a question, we'll raise our hand.
Right.
Great.
How many of us have a behavior manager?
Right.
How many of you offer that? Yeah.
In general ed?
This is general ed.
For general ed.
We do.
Okay. Great. Other questions? Oh, yes. Dr. Galvin.
Okay, so I have two questions here, and one involves SUU, and so I'm sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot here. But I have heard a great deal about the collaborative relationship that SUU has with Iron School District and the approach that Iron School District is taking with their special educators.
Yes.
And has talked to you about what they'd like to see with that licensing. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then I have a question for all of you about ed leadership and IDA law. So.
I guess I'm involved. Is this one going to get feedback?
None of us are the only one. Go ahead.
So. All right. Dr. Shannon Delaney, who came from BYU, is now the new superintendent down at Iron County. And so she comes with a special ed background and came in and said, we really need to strengthen this partnership, which we have, because we have a professional development school in the elementary school. We have at the and that this is going off topic, but we also have athletic training practicums in the, I mean, we really are joined together. But she came in and said, we need help looking at data and analyzing data. Can you help us? So we've come in with our undergrad program, and that's part of what our students do in that dual license is to go in data and then help make sense out of it. And so it's very much their language. They understand the purpose behind it. They understand how assessment is used and how assessment is used not only just in a classroom for a teacher, but how it might be used within the school and then how the school uses it within the district. So it really was a question with Dr. Delaney coming in saying, I need help. Can we work together and strengthen? And it's been a really good strengthening for the students coming out with that kind of extra added on ability to take data and make sense out of data. Numbers often just is a numerical thing that's sitting out there, but this actually has some context to it, some contextual information. So it's, we won, you lost.
I know.
I'm sorry, but I know. But we're so pleased to have her. She is a strength. She's such an advocate for public education and the education of all youngsters. Did I answer? Am I off the hot? Okay, go ahead.
Can I follow up on Emily's question? I get the sense that maybe there's more to that question, such as, I think maybe from those of you who are out in schools, what could we be doing better at the university to train elementary and secondary educators to prevent, set up systems, environments, so that the behaviors that are so challenging are less likely to happen, and when they do happen, how can they respond to that? What are you seeing from the schools that we can do better?
Thank you, that's exactly what I was.
I know that's what you were saying, but I pose that question to us. What are we not doing so well? What are you seeing out in the schools that we could do better in terms of behavior? Because that's really what comes out more than anything. So I'm asking the question of you. I'm turning this panel around.
Appreciate that question. I appreciate the question because one of the things that I thought about, the two things, she's right, more experience, exposure with behavior management. The other one for me is special education law. I'd like them to know more about the IEPs. I feel like I'm doing a lot of training on that.
Besides IEPs, what else about special ed law?
Well, it's all related to the IEPs for me. It's getting ready for them. It's knowing what the timelines are, what the requirements are. When do you have to send the notice of meetings home? I mean, simple, basic things that, those kind of things that are in the law.
Other comments?
Well, in a charter school setting, I'm finding people have different opinions, or like a district training on, so we have to wait 6 weeks, right? And they have to be 2 standard deviations we allow, they have this formula in their head. So I think if the colleges could prepare students to understand there aren't separate ideas or district ways to do it. There's one way to do, in a way, the law, we need to follow the law. So I think that it's sort of repeating what you said. Can I ask a follow-up question? Or maybe I'm not ready.
You might be. I want to address this behavior management.
This has to do with behavior again, and I would say we would like general ed teachers to be more aware of the use of the fewer and the definite, because we're doing extensive training with our special ed people, but since that time this has become a school-wide thing, and so the general ed teachers at the moment are generally clueless about developing either of those.
Hi, I'm Margarita Castro, and it's my first year at Valley Academy Charter School in Oregon. And one of the things that I'm really faced with is the opposition from the teachers. And I think this goes back to the laws. I have an elementary teacher who doesn't want his student to miss dance And I go, I've talked to the dance teacher that I wanted to change. No, I want him to keep that time. So it's like I can't get them to understand they have to come out. That takes precedence because of the loss, and he's not budging, and my principal is not helping. And then I have a secondary teacher in their first year who thinks that he's not responsible to make sure the students come out to the resource room, that it's not his problem, it's the student's problem. He has to come out. So I'm facing a lot of opposition. They're putting SPET last, where SPET should be first. And I'm facing this with new graduates and old school teachers, or teachers that graduated before this emphasis is coming out. So the general ed is pretty much, in my point of view, clueless. I have to fight them every day, and my principal was just a 4th grade teacher last year. I'm fighting him even more. So the universities have to emphasize SPED comes first. It's the law. They must go out, accommodate whatever you need to change, and have them go out. And the question I have for you, and I should have the answer myself, doesn't SPED precede electives? They cannot. If that's the time, that the only time they can come out is during electives, don't they then forego the elective? In my school, it's like, no, they have to have electives. We can't punish them. And my last question is there any way I can talk to you individually? Are we going to have a chance to mingle? To have personal stuff for different ones? Or are they leaving?
I don't know. We will have a break after this in just a little bit, and I think some of them will stick around.
Okay.
There are cookies out there. That's our enticement.
Hello. I work with the Utah Parent Center, and our focus is working with parents of our special needs kids in the school system. And one of the challenges that we sometimes see is that general ed teachers are maybe a little unprepared sometimes to work with the parents of the special needs kids. And sometimes, actually more than sometimes, a lot of times when you have a special needs child, you also have a parent that has special needs as well. And we see a lot of conflict between general ed teachers and parents in terms of how they're communicating, and sometimes maybe a little bit of a lack of understanding of how to work with a parent who also has disabilities or challenges themselves. So my feedback would be, maybe strengthening that relationship piece, and when you're talking about disabilities, also equating that to working with parents of kids that have disabilities as well. So thank you.
I take a couple more comments, and I want to just wrap up with one more question.
So I think in response to Tina, what I'm seeing, and I feel like it's pretty common, is just a lot of general ed teachers not taking ownership of special education students and just feeling like you guys need to take care of them. I just think that really needs to be emphasized in their training. To the student with special needs is still their student in their class, and we're there to support.
Short, I'll be short.
She's got the mic.
I think to add to that, if they looked at data together, kind of in a PLC model, I mean, that would have so many different things, but it would also put, emphasis on the fact that the general ed teachers don't necessarily know what to do, or they kind of look to us for guidance. And so if you can include special ed teachers, in with the general ed to look at actual classroom data with all the kids included in there, and then what would you do? It wouldn't be much different for the kid who's struggling, who's not on an IEP yet, or never will be, and the kid who's on an IEP. And then I think you can foster that attitude of everyone's got the same differences in a way.
Second hand right here.
I will be quick as well. One thing that I found very beneficial, we work with a lot of behaviors at Spectrum Academy, but I went to Weber State, which I'm very biased with, but working on how to take correct data. I think that's a huge thing coming out of the schools. Is it an off test? What does this look like? What are we working with? Because I think stepping back and watching real behaviors and things happen in the classroom and letting them take data and see how that's going time and time and time again, so that when they're actually in the classroom and trying to teach and trying to take it in and trying to do all these, they have that base knowledge of really what they're watching for and what they're looking for, and they can use that data to then prevent the behavior from happening again. Because a lot of times they're really good at de-escalation or getting the behavior under control, but then to look and see how do we make this so that it doesn't continue, I think is a big thing.
One last question that we have is the one that Glenna asked earlier about special ed law and ed leadership programs. How is that happening in your universities? Glenna mentioned, Utah can, I guess, use the word boast a little bit that we don't have as many due process hearings and different things, and that's been because, there is this foundation of what the law says and how we can work together for the interests of both the parents and the education system. So can you talk about that a little bit?
I can talk about it from the perspective of Utah State. We have an ASC program, and our members of the ASC program take a full-on course developed by one of our faculty members who has regular ed and special ed background on bringing special ed and regular ed together. They take a database decision-making course, and then we do have a school law course. It's the only course not taught by USU faculty. It's taught by attorneys, one is Carol Lear at the state office, and the other is Martin Bates, who is superintendent in the Brandon district. And so they get school law from attorneys who understand school law. So. You lost Shannon.
We lost Shannon.
Oh, yeah.
We have an administrative license, and it's very heavy practicum based. School law, again, is taught, currently, right now, it's taught by 2 superintendents. So bring that knowledge to it. But in that faculty, I'm going to say out of the 6 that kind of are in that area, 4 of them have special education. So it's part of who we are. I can also, I'm going to also say, I spent time in Finland as a Fulbright, and so I watched how the education system worked over there. In the Finnish system, special ed is more of a triage. When a student is identified as struggling, that student gets immediate services, And 99.8% of their students graduate from compulsory, which is through 9th grade. And of those, 99.8%, over 60% of them have received some services during their time in compulsory. Kind of met with faculty and said, we need to help our teachers understand that it's not them and us issue. It's more of, this child is struggling, what can I do immediately? Let's get help now. And so we've kind of changed how we've done it across the board with administrators and regular educators and special educators, in that we're looking at it as it's a whole child, and we do it now. It's a triage. So we're a little bit different in that focus and stretch it.
We don't have one.
We don't have any leadership.
Passing the buck. We do have one of our core classes is a school law class that's taught through our ed leadership department. So all students get some exposure to legal stuff. We're trying to keep on top of that in terms of making sure that there's enough emphasis on special ed stuff. Special ed students subsequently take an additional class that focuses on special ed law. It's primarily been taught in recent years by Brenda Van Gorder from the Granite School District, who really has great expertise in that area. So our SPED folks get a lot of preparation in that regard, probably, but the regular ed folks not quite as much.
Glenn, you had a follow-up really quick?
Yeah, one of the questions. Yeah, there we go. That's So my question has to do with what are the various programs and the different ways that the programs are addressing a multi-tiered approach or an RTI approach, to both two groups of people. One, students. So how are students receiving instruction in a multi-tiered approach? What does that look like at a school-wide? What does that look like in their classrooms? And what does that look like when students aren't making it, isn't cutting it? So because that would be the multi-tiered approach. And then that would be one population. The other population would be your admin leadership population. How is that focus being addressed with them in terms of what does that multi-tiered approach look like at a building level, at a classroom level, and then also when kids aren't making it? There's been a big discussion about behavior. You can focus, this is how we're doing with behavior, but we also heard about the importance of addressing numeracy and literacy. I personally would like to hear how you're doing it with behavior, but you can choose how you want to respond.
Isn't that nice of Glenn to give you a choice?
One of the issues, and this has come up in a variety of similar meetings like this over the last couple of years, is we try to train our students in that kind of MTSS RTI approach, but the constant issue we struggle with is we can't necessarily always find great examples for them to see out in the schools. And I apologize, I'm not trying to offend anybody or be critical, but as somebody mentioned earlier in the panel, one of the comments that we frequently get is the students will come back and say, you're teaching me to do all this stuff, but I'm not seeing it happen, and I'm meeting with resistance, and I'm struggling with things of that nature. So I think our students, at least in special ed and regular ed, are getting good grounding in that. I can't really speak as much to the ed leadership side of things, at least in our institution. So.
Other comments?
I think I would have to agree with Roth's comments too. I think across our general education and special education classes, our students are getting the collaboration, they're getting the MTSS approach in general ed in particular. However, when they go out in their field experience, sometimes they don't see the best modeling. And when there is co-teaching, we're really trying to push a co-teaching model at Weber State, because we think that that's going to benefit all students within a classroom. So push in, but also just with co-teaching. But what they're finding is many of the classroom teachers, some of them new graduates, some of them been around a long time, really feel like the special education teacher is there to just work either with the special education students, so take them aside and put them in a corner, or go and make copies and do some help, but they don't really take advantage of the specialized knowledge that the special education teachers have, which is to accommodate, to modify, bring in graphic organizers, talk about action in the activities and tying things to common core. So we really feel like sometimes they are undervalued in the school system. That's not always true, and again, I don't mean to offend anyone at all, but we do see a little bit of difficulty sometimes with best practices. What we are doing, though, is that we are working on a mentor teacher academy, which would be for practicing teachers within our neighboring school districts, to train them in our ways, give them master's credit, and these people are nominated by their school districts as master's teachers, by the way. We're not doing that. And then send our practicum students out to those teachers to really see best practices. We're also taking a look at student teaching as being more of a co-teaching model rather than kicking the master teacher out of the classroom. So we are aware of that problem. It's a difficult problem to work with, because you're working with many districts, many building superintendents, many teachers, and it's difficult.
Just one thing to add to that is that a lot of our students coming back, our graduates, say that one of the issues they're facing is the prevalence of scripted instruction in their schools, and it makes it difficult to apply a lot of the differentiation strategies that we've been teaching them. And so that's an issue that a lot of them are struggling with.
Yeah, the second on that one, we present, it's a challenge. Do we want to prepare with best practice, what we know what works, what's evidence-based, we know the differential, we know all this that's going to help a youngster be successful, or do we prepare to walk into the school where the math lesson is scripted and it doesn't matter that you didn't learn it yesterday, you will read it today just as it is. So I think when, in higher ed, we really struggle that in teacher programs and teacher prep, is we want to live in this ideal world. We want kids to be successful. We want those teachers to come out and believe that every child can succeed. But in reality, they're going to walk into a classroom where that school is scripted, and they've got to make that test score. It hurts us. I would think my colleagues up here, that hurts us. That's one thing that's painful for us to deal with, and I don't have an answer.
Because there are no easy answers.
There's no easy answer.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of joint renewal, something that we do at BYU through our partnership and through the Center for Improvement of Teaching and Education sites. We have associates meetings. So we have teacher associates from each of our partnership school districts and BYU professionals, professors, and we meet monthly and talk about renewal and talk about the issues that are happening in the schools. We do lots of readings and bring those insights together so all of our districts can talk with professors and make changes jointly. We do that similarly with the administrators. We have leaders associates, and I think that might just be twice a year. No, maybe not. I've already gone to 2 meetings. And I have so many meetings to go to, I can't keep track of them. But they do the same thing for leaders who are at those levels where they really can make differences. So I think it's a joint thing that we need to work on together, universities with schools.
I couldn't agree more, and I just want to say thank you. It's been such a pleasure being here and hearing your feedback to higher ed. I promise to take this back and look at it with my colleagues at Utah State. I think that's the answer, is to keep the partnerships between public ed and higher ed robust and healthy and continuous communication. And so I can't tell you how helpful it's been to me to be here today and just hear your perspective on special ed and regular ed. So thank you.
I think one of the things that's happening probably with all the universities is an attempt to build a disposition within students of these pre-service teachers, a willingness to work together with other. I know they do a lot of group working classes. We take them through in cohorts. They learn what professional learning communities are and how they're supposed to work within school districts. And most of our partnership school districts have professional learning communities going where the grade level teachers meet together and plan together. They're supposed to be bringing in special ed. And of course some of them are functioning better than others, but they look at student data, they communicate about individual students and how to help them. And so it's not these independent, close the door, I'll do what I do. I think there's a real attempt out there in all of these schools to try to work more closely together and build kind of a learning community which is concerned with every single student. So we're trying to, and I know I speak for every university up here, that trying to build that same mentality and disposition in our students, that they are willing to gather information and work together for the common good of the children. I know that probably doesn't get right at the specificity of special ed working with a classroom teacher together, but at least it's an attempt to move in that direction.
I think going along with that, of course we have to teach, the law and all of those concepts and principles that they really need as a strong foundation so that they have a standard base. But I think one of the things that you were getting at was that just knowing a procedure doesn't work for every situation, and so one of the things that we can do to prepare teachers is teach them strategies and so that they can have tools, and one of those is collaboration, and another one is just different ways of being flexible. So instead of saying, here is how you write a lesson plan, saying, here are a lot of different models and here are ways that you can adapt them for different contexts. And here's a scenario with this kind of situation, and here's another one with this one, and how would you handle that? And not to say that you can cover everything, but to say, depending on which state you're in, which school you're in, which classroom you're in, which year you're in, it's going to be different. And so, you know, here are some different strategies that you can use and apply so that you can be flexible and adapt to your context, because it's not the same even from week to week in a classroom.
Let's hear it for our panel. Thank you for willing to share, and also thank you for willing to listen. We really appreciate it. We're going to take a 10-minute break and start back up at 25 till. We're going to have four of our institutions of higher education actually present some information to us about the grants they received from USOE and the successes and outcomes of those. We'll have BYU, University of Utah, Weber State, and Utah State University. We'll start that in about 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
We will talk about the grant funding for our field service, the field experience that we have prior to student teaching. So let me just talk about this. First of all, the principles behind it. We know that the effect of teachers on children's learning is great. And teachers that implement effective strategies have the most effective impact on their students or their teacher candidates. And we also know that in special education especially, recruiting and retaining excellent teacher candidates and teachers is essential, and we are trying to contribute to that. You know, in the past there have been some doubts about whether teacher education really makes a difference. We saw the big move to licensed teachers who had content knowledge, but not necessarily pedagogy, and research has shown that's not the best thing to do. The pedagogy is extremely important, and of course we're all involved in that at this time in preparing teachers. So this research that you can look through is simply what has come around to show that just because somebody understands a subject doesn't mean they can teach well. And so we still do need the great work that we're all doing to prepare our educators. So with that, let me talk a little bit about our summer practicum program. We work with the BYU Public School Partnership, as Tina has explained, 5 districts in our area. And we hold a 6-week summer practicum, currently in Alpine and Nebo districts. They are so good to work with us and provide a school setting, wherein our students in mild, moderate, and severe preparation actually teach every day from 8 to 11:30, and in preparation for student teaching. We employ 8 to 10 mentor teachers to actually coach those teachers in their classroom, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. And we emphasize the effective teaching model that we're all familiar with, that they understand database practice, they model, they prompt, they give effective feedback to students, and so forth. Let's look at the mild moderate part of it for an example here. This last summer we had 23 pre-student teachers with those statistics, and we had excellent mentor teachers to work with them. We also have supervisors. We have a practicum coordinator who's over the whole program, and then each school site has a site coordinator. Megan, you were, I think, site coordinator last year, Nebo. And then we also have mentors / coaches that work right with the teachers in the classroom while they're teaching during the summer. So we average about 162 students between the schools. We ask that these students have completed 1st through 5th grades, and they are referred actually by their teachers in the schools in the spring, and the districts invite the parents to enroll their students in the summer program so that we can have an opportunity to provide the practicum for our teacher candidates. So it looks like this. We work in elementary schools. We have 1 classroom per mentor teacher, and that mentor teacher has usually three teacher candidates they're working with. In the mild moderate program, it looks like this, wherein
There's a mentor teacher in the room. There are 3 teachers at 3 small teaching stations. Each of those has 5 to 7 students, right, usually. And the mentor is right there to observe, to give feedback, to step in and model whatever needs to be done. And those teacher candidates are responsible then for their daily lesson planning, for their assessment, for interpreting their data and using that to plan for the students. Now, we also have the students involved in what they call rotations, which are alternating between PE, music, and art for a period of time in the midst of that morning instructional time. Yeah. The structure looks similar to this. The coaching is very important, where their mentor teacher is right there with them. She looks over the lesson plans every day. She gives them feedback on those. She helps them be prepared. And then we'll give good formative feedback to the teacher candidates. We also have separate people, other people, who come in and evaluate the teacher candidates. This is for their grade, for formative work, and also for their grade, to make sure they have met minimum requirements for lesson planning, for instructional methods, for those kind of things. Yeah. The outcomes from this last summer, for the teacher candidates, they need to meet a minimum requirement for their lesson plans. In other words, the lesson plans must contain the required elements, they must be well written, they must be pertaining to the students' goals and objectives for the summer. And we ask that those lessons have at least 80% compliance with the format that we have for them, and we have good luck with those in math and reading and writing. The students, in other words, can plan lessons well. Of course, that doesn't mean they can teach well. So we also look at observations of their instruction, both informally and formally, and this requires an 80% score in order to successfully complete the practicum. So we feel like they're pretty strong in those areas too. Our assessments, for pre-post assessments, we have a math CBA based on the state core that we've developed. We also have, we currently use the Reading Mastery program in summer practicum, so we have the Reading Mastery tests that go along with it. We also do a pre-assessment in writing with the students in mild moderate, and I'm not sure if they do in severe. Megan, do they do a writing assessment in severe? Okay. And that is simply for planning purposes at the beginning of the summer. Our data from this last year, let me say that in mild moderate, we'd like to have 2 different math units that the students prepare based on testing. Now, we send our teacher candidates into the schools in the middle of May, and the districts are good to invite the students in, and they actually do pre-assessment for math. Then, in their methods class that they take during spring term, which at BYU is May and part of June, they will prepare as well as they can 2 math units for the summer based on those assessment data that they've already done for the students. We ask them to have, one is usually in the areas of calculation, math calculation of course, and then we ask them to have experience teaching another area of math, usually time or money or measurement or geometry or something other than math calculation. So the first math unit, we can see that the students showed good pre-post gains. This is the average for the entire summer practicum between both districts. We can see that for their second math unit, which is usually more time or money measurement, that sort of thing, there was also a significant gain. And we can see that in the Reading Mastery, the students showed a gain that was significant statistically during the 6 weeks. For the severe program, we have a combined math and reading pre-post test scores here, in which we see there were good gains for the kids in the severe program. Now, the severe program is either, the students are either working in the ESY program within the district, it's already established, or in Alpine District, we actually set up our own classrooms, just like the mild moderate, where the kids come in and it's not necessarily attached to ESY. They still plan to teach that way. We have started gathering satisfaction data to see how other people feel about things that go on. Parents are usually very happy. I'm pretty sure they enjoy the free childcare for 6 weeks, but they also seem to be appreciative of what their students learn and how they progress. So this is mild moderate parent satisfaction. You'll see some what they appreciate most, what they think helps, whether or not it helps their children maintain their skills. But we also look at the teachers who are referring when they get these students back in their classrooms. And they seem to be appreciative also. They've maintained their reading skills. They believe that attendance helps the children. And yeah. So, in the severe program, we've finally started requesting satisfaction data from the teachers and the parents, and feel that those are strong also. I'd like to just share with you for a moment some district personnel perspectives on excuse me.
They're twofold, probably. One is for our district, one is for BYU and the students that are there, which is kind of obvious. But for our district, our students benefit enormously. Students love the program. It makes a huge difference in their lives because it's a positive experience with school. They get a lot of individual attention. So a lot of our students start to really love school after the summer program. The other is for our district as a whole, because we have an experience with our pre-service teachers, and we start a relationship with them. The third is probably for the BYU students themselves. It's a place where they have guided practice on all the theories and strategies they've been trying, and it's a safe environment for them to practice teaching.
One of the benefits of this BYU summer learning program for Eagle School District is that the students get to have opportunities to learn during the summertime that they wouldn't be given otherwise. They get to do this practical application of teacher skills under the supervision of a mentor teacher. And that mentor teacher is constantly asking them self-reflective questions, so they learn how to be self-reflective educators. And that's probably one of the most important things a good, effective teacher can do, is to be self-reflective. And so I like that they model that for teacher candidates.
Once we were in the classroom, and then we had the theory-based practice that we learned in the classroom, we also had the opportunity to put that in practice through some of the practicum. And the practicum was rigorous, I'm not going to lie. I mean, it was difficult, but I think that's what made it unique and effective.
When the students first go in, you can see that they're really nervous and scared, and the summer program is incredibly good for the students. At the end of the program, they feel so successful, and they are ready to teach. Those teachers come out, they have the skills, they practiced over and over and over again the things that they need to do as a teacher, and they know what they're doing when they get into the classroom.
We can, or I can definitely tell you that the IHE funding we receive from the state office is essential for this summer practicum program, and we feel like it's a very important part of what we do in preparing our teacher candidates in special education. Thank you.
Hi again, I'm Fran Butler from Weaver State, and I'm really pleased to present our program. I have to say that I love the BYU program that Gordon just explained to us. I think that summer is a wonderful time to really hone those skills. So thanks for presenting that. And thank you all for coming and listening. We're going to talk a little bit about, Jack wasn't able to be here. He's teaching class this morning, so I get to be the dean and I get to be Jack too. So we'll go forward. No? Why is it not moving? Well, is it not, it just not seem to want to advance? I just had it upside down. All right, so now let's see if we can go. I know. All right. We have obviously coursework in our programs. Let me just tell you a little bit about that. We have embedded practica in everything that we do. And our grant was for personal preparation for people on alternative licenses, urgency hires. We also have some paraeducators in there. So the main challenge that we have is also incorporating charter schools too, so we'll get to that. But what I wanted to say about this is that the coursework that we use to prepare our on-campus students, both at the undergraduate pre-licensure and also at the graduate pre-licensure, is the same for our grant participants as well. And so these are some of the courses that they take. They're pretty simple. We have math, reading, writing, a separate course in writing. We have assessment, behavior management, and so on. All the things that the state says we have to have in order to be able to recommend for licensure. Right now, we have actually this has gone up a little bit. Right now, we have about 30 students that we graduate in special education on campus and about another 30 in the off-campus cohorts. And right now, also, we have about 60 who are in the major who are before pre-student teaching. That seems to be going larger and larger. We were affected with the LDS missionary age as well, but our population at Weber State in special education, even on our on-campus program, tends to be non-traditional. We do have some traditional age students, but a lot of them are older. So the average age of our special education majors on campus is actually higher than the elementary ed. So we weren't as affected as the elementary was, but we were to some extent. We have a person on campus in our college who is a recruiter, and he actively goes out and works with the high schools and junior highs to try to get people involved in education primarily and also in special education. So our off-campus post-baccalaureate programs. We used distance technology. We have a cohort of students that meet with us on campus, and then we also use interactive video conferencing to reach teachers in outlying areas. All of our licensure courses are held from 4:30 in the afternoon to 7:10, and for our off-campus students, they meet twice a week. And so, with the exception that this semester, the cohort that I'm teaching that's finishing up with our prime grant, we're doing back-to-back hybrid courses. So I'm just finishing up the reading course, and that's the 7 weeks of intensive reading instruction, which is hybrid. They meet with me once a week, and then they have quite a few assignments that they do on their own. And then in 2 weeks, we'll start the writing. So we're doing literacy back-to-back with that cohort. But in general, they're doing 2 nights per week. If our participants would like, they can get a concurrent MED in curriculum and instruction. It's not required, but they are allowed to do that if they would like to do that. So the Project Prime. This is a young lady who actually graduated. She's at Weber District. Eileen Sanofsky, and she's one of our very, very first pilot people. She's an outstanding teacher in her district, and so she allowed me to use her picture. And so that was probably, what, Marilyn, probably 8 or 10 years ago that Eileen finished. Okay, so The Prime grant involves several important things. One of them is that we have a very strong relationship with State Office of Education, with our local agencies, including charter schools. And we're in our 7th year now of our Prime grant. So, and before that we had a different grant that was called SEAL, which was basically the same thing. And it was funded through IDEA Part D, as you probably are aware. We are unique in how we use our state funds, I think. How we use our state funds is that we support the instructors, and our participants, as the candidates who come through our program, pay a recording fee. So the only thing they are paying is their $40 course recording fee, and for their books, and eventually for their praxis test. But we are using the funds that we're getting from the state then to pay for the instructor. So all of our funds go that way, rather than having our students pay their own tuition fees, which would be much, much higher, and it would be a much more expensive grant to administer that way. The other thing that allows us to do is that because these are students who are not paying the full tuition, they don't have to matriculate in our MAD program or in our undergraduate program. So we can have admission requirements that can, I won't say bypass it, but modify the admission requirements. So in order to be recommended for the Prime program, our students obviously have to have a graduate, they have to have an undergraduate degree, they have to have an adequate GPA, but they have to be recommended by their school district or their charter school. That's it, and they have to be working in that school in order to be eligible for this. They are also interviewed by a group of us as well. So they have an admission procedure, but it's a modified, streamlined admission procedure. Part of that is because of just the timeline. When we get our grant funds, we get notified of our grant funds in March or April, and we want to start a cohort, and by that time our admission deadline for the MED and the undergraduate programs has long passed. So we've been able to admit people pretty much on the spur of the moment. The other thing that it does is that I'll get a call from the state office saying, I've got this person in Nebo who needs a program, and excuse me, do you have room in your Prime program for this person? And I'll interview the person, I'll see what background they have. The State Office of Education is recommending them, even if it's in the middle of a cohort. If we have room in our group, we will take that person, subject to our admission requirements, of course. So it gives us a lot of flexibility to be able to do the admissions based on our Prime requirements rather than on the teacher education requirements. And as I said, they're similar, but we are able to streamline it. Our primary charge is to work with teachers in the charter schools throughout the state, but we have an awful lot of public school teachers and from Academy, sort of in the North Salt Lake area. So there are some other charter schools in that area who joined that cohort as well. So we've been able to really focus on their needs. The instructional coaching, that was one of the things we really wanted to implement in our grant, and due to sequestration, funding cuts that everyone is aware of, we were not able to have as much money that would go towards coaches. So as part of our partnership agreements with our charters and our district people, we've come to the realization that they have to do a lot of on-site mentoring for us, in that we'll send people out as we can, once or twice, during the semester, but we can't be there on an ongoing basis. And that seems to be working out, all right, as far as I know. That seems to be working out pretty well. But we were funded with about $60,000 and we have at least 20 new people in the cohort, plus the ongoing cohort that's finishing. So those funds get stretched very, very, very thin. Altogether, between the two cohorts, one's finishing and one is starting, we have at least 40 people, and that's $60,000 gets stretched very, very thin. So that's kind of how the program works. We have meetings frequently with the Ogden, Davis, and Weaver school districts, and they come up with ideas for us. For example, several years ago, we talked about our course sequence for the Prime participants. And we asked them whether it would be more beneficial to have a course in transition or one in writing. And the districts identified that writing was really a key area, and that they were working with transition on the district level. So we made that decision that we would include a writing class. I think that's been very beneficial because now our prime graduates go into the schools. They have a knowledge of how to create a writing CBA, how to analyze student work, and how to develop a really targeted writing intervention to raise student improvement. Now, this last couple of months, we've been thinking we really do need to go back and put that transition course back in. So what I think we're going to do in the future is include the transition course and then combine the instructional planning and the IEP course. So because that all kind of fits together, because there's just a limited amount of time that we can do, but we need to get the most bang for our buck. We also provide coursework for residential treatment center teachers. That's what that RTC is down there. For example, Provo Canyon School, Heritage School, Diamond Academy down in St. George, Tila's Academy. There are quite a few of them. They do not participate in the grant funds. Their schools could pay for their instructional costs. They are not sharing in the grant monies, but they are able to take advantage of the courses that we're broadcasting out. So we're reaching a much wider audience. And one of the benefits of that is that many of these teachers who are in the RTCs, that they apply for public school jobs and charter school jobs, and they become public school and charter school teachers. So they're getting the same training that all of our other teachers are getting too. So they are self-funding. Their schools are self-funding them, but they are still taking advantage of our program. So I think that's a really nice way to maximize, again, the few dollars that we have to get the biggest impact with that. So some of the outcomes, right now, I did a count, and I sent that over to Patrick because he's analyzing this data for me, because I haven't had time because I've been teaching a lot. But we have at least 71 participants, and probably more that are completed. And I have 17 in the pipeline right now who are doing their guided observation, student teaching, quote unquote, part of it, so they'll be finishing up. We have a brand new cohort with 18 participants in it. Again, we're using interactive video conferencing. So I'm meeting with a group of 6 to 8 people. And Patrick, how many do you have in your on campus? In Lampos?
13.
Okay, so he's got 13 of that. Then we also broadcast out to Juab County, to Sevier County, to St. George, Roosevelt, Utah County. A big group that meets at UVU and takes the same licensing courses. And we do have a partnership with UVU to provide that for them. So hopefully we're going to get a partnership with Dixie as well to extend that so they get some credit towards their degree for our courses. But the partnership with UVU is just started about a year ago, and it's working out actually quite well. And as they mentioned, they're going to be starting a special ed program hopefully sometime soon. And as I said, they don't need to matriculate in the MBD program. And they go through as a cohort. One of the nice things about IBC, though, is that in every one of our classes, there are times when the student has to demonstrate a lesson, they have to demonstrate a technique, a strategy, or whatever. And our distance people, we can watch them through the IBC technology. So it's very nice. We've been really happy with that. The outcomes for the K-12 students, all of our curriculum is strictly aligned to the K-12 core standards. And we also adhere to the UETS and the CEC standards. We only use current evidence-based practices. Everything that we teach has a research tagline to it. So our students know where to find the research on the strategy that they're learning. And I think that's a very strong component. And I know all of our universities do that. It's just required now. We have a huge emphasis on data analysis and progress monitoring. So in their 3 content courses, the reading, the math, and the writing, they learn to create their own curriculum-based assessment, and I have a very specific set of guidelines that they follow on how to choose examples, what makes a valid example, what are reliable data, and so on. They do that, they analyze it, they create a present levels of academic achievement and functional performance statement from that CBA. They write an achievable goal from that, and they also write their instructional recommendations. They turn that in, it gets graded. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it could use some improvement. So if it needs improvement, they have to do it again. That's fine. Once that's all approved, then they teach their targeted interventions. And the targeted interventions need to be targeted to the data from the curriculum-based assessment that they've just administered. We chart that data, and Bonnie is going to be collecting. I have the data, she's going to be compiling that data for us so that we have some figures for you on that. But that's been very strong, and I know that we've got some people who've been through our program that are here and can attest to the rigor of those lineage.
I was going to say, you come out of that course very well equipped to go forward and be a great teacher.
Yeah, yeah, and it's very rewarding for us because we try to teach our students to be able to be effective and no matter what setting they're placed, whatever curriculum the district has given to them, they understand how it works, how it's supposed to work, and what fidelity of implementation means. And so they really get a strong dose of that. So we're seeing some really good outcomes with our participants and with their students. And that is Project Prime. I don't know if I answered everything, but hope that I did. Thank you. I can't turn this thing on. Where are you trying to? You can handle it. Thank you.
All right, I'm not Chris Bischke. Obviously, so I apologize. Dr. Bischke wasn't able to be with us this morning. She became ill last night, and so I can't answer any questions about what I'm about to show you. But as many of you know, the need for teachers in the area of sensory impairments, vision and hearing, and related types of things tends to kind of wax and wane over time. The last couple of years, we've been in sort of a waxing phase where we've been hearing a lot about a greater need on the part of districts and across the state. Across the state. So we've been very fortunate to get funding from the state office to do some teacher preparation. Chris is the coordinator of the Multi-University Consortium in Sensory Impairments, which works with a variety of the institutions around the state to prepare folks in this area. So people in there, deaf and hard of hearing, visual impairments, and just recently we got a deafblind endorsement program started as well that's being run by Kathy Nelson through the university. So those are the main areas that we're focusing on. So this is just some kind of related to what I just said. We're seeing increasing needs across the state in some of these areas, and so we've been fortunate to get some of this funding to prepare additional folks to work in with groups like USDB as well as some of the school districts. We're in our second year of funding. This is just some demographic information, and again, I can't really answer questions about the numbers because I'm not fully in-depth familiar with them, but we have about 25 folks. Down on the bottom there, you can see the breakdown in terms of across those areas of deaf and hard of hearing, visual impairments, and deafblind. We've got 5 students who are going to be completing coming this summer. 6 students will be finishing in the fall, and the rest of the folks will be doing student teaching either in the spring or the fall of 2015, as well as completing master's degree or deafblind endorsement coursework. This is just some information about how elements of the program line up with some different aspects like the Utah core, the essential elements, and the math endorsement. Our programs do provide awareness and information to students about a lot of these things, and there's a lot of focus as they do things like develop IEP objectives about how those line up with the Common Core, essential elements, and the expanded core curriculum, for example, for students with visual impairments. In terms of the state performance plan indicators, the students get a lot of they do go through those core courses that Mary and I were talking about earlier in terms of regular and special ed collaboration. So they get a lot of exposure to that and how to collaborate with folks to prepare students to take whatever kinds of statewide assessments are appropriate for them in particular. Least restrictive environment, depending on the level that the folks are working on primarily, whether it's K-12 or birth to 5 or something like that, they get a lot of exposure and a lot of opportunity to develop transition plans at different levels. So on the early level as kids are transitioning, but also on the older level as well, kids that are moving beyond school age population. So that's what I just said. Sorry, I was just told this morning that I was going to have to step in. Try to do this, so I apologize if I don't sound too with it here. Some evaluation feedback from year 1. The coursework evaluations have been very positive. Here's just a couple examples of comments from the students in terms of their positive reactions to the training that they're getting. So. In the program, we use quite a few adjunct instructors in different areas because we don't have lots of faculty members who focus in this particular arena. So we're really fortunate to have a lot of really good folks in the community and from other programs who do instruction as part of the program. We're currently evaluating the student feedback from this past fall semester, but they're seeming to show fairly similar trends in terms of positive evaluations on the part of the students. We're also in the process of starting to do some follow-up evaluations, both with graduates, students who've graduated from the program, as well as employers and districts out there. So those of you that are working in LEAs, if you get paperwork coming across your desk, please take a few minutes to fill that out and give us some feedback on how you think students are doing in terms of their performance. As folks are finishing up the program, a big focus, especially in student teaching and other experiences, is evaluating the kind of impact they're having on the students that they're working with. So they get a lot of evaluation in that regard in terms of what kind of gains they're producing for the students that they're working with as part of the program. And then again, as we do some of these follow-up evaluations, we're hoping to gather more data from districts and employers and administrators about the type of impact that they're having on the students that they're working with. And so we're very thankful for the support we've been getting from the state office. Again, the need definitely seems to have been out there these last few years, and so so we've been really happy to be able to provide that support for students, particularly in new areas like the deafblind endorsement program. And so we're excited to continue that work. And on behalf of Dr. Bishke, thank you very much. I can try to answer any questions, but I may not be able to.
Slow down. All right. Got a flash drive if I need it. I wasn't sure. You guys got me covered. How are you doing?
Good.
See a lot of familiar faces. You ready for a 3-day weekend? Do you have a 3-day weekend?
Bob, did you get anybody that you care about some flowers today?
Oh.
Because this person, Michelle, right here, she got some flowers today already.
I've still got a few hours, all right? Yes, you did. All right. By the way, before I even get started, I'm well aware that we're the last university to go this morning, and lunch is coming up. So notice, I have a timer that will be strategically located, like right about there. Okay, I'm Bob Morgan, Department of Special Education and Rehabilitation, Utah State University. We have a lot of programs to tell you about. We're going to move quickly. We probably won't provide a lot of data. We could, but we're going to move just lightning fast here and try to describe a lot of different programs to you. A lot of very unique and different programs. Before we get started, though, I really want to thank the Utah State Office of Education and Glenna and all of her staff for making this possible. I mean, we wouldn't be here without them. We wouldn't have the funding or the ability to collaborate. It's the relationships we've been able to establish with people over the years, many years now, as a matter of fact, that really means so much. And then Lowell, Tom, Siraj, and everybody else at the Utah Personnel Development Center, you're always so accommodating. We have our presentations going and everything else. Thank you. We have quite a variety of different teacher education programs at Utah State funded by the state office. And so very quickly, we're going to have different presenters coming up and describing them to you. I'm just giving you the big picture, the overview. The key message here is that there's a continuum of programs, teacher prep programs for special ed, for public and charter schools. The options are tailored to meet the needs of prospective teachers throughout the state. There are 2-year programs for those returning to school who need a slightly slower pace. Packed solid, though, nonetheless. Faster-paced alternative teacher prep programs. And the idea here is that each program is unique, each is different, each is tailored to a different teacher trainee. And they are briefly summarized in this very busy table. So let me take a minute and kind of run through this. The column on the left is the on-campus pre-service program. This is not the one that is funded by the state office, but I put it up here just because it needs to be up here. We need to remember those traditional younger students who are on campus. They specialize in either mild, moderate, severe, or early childhood disabilities. We graduate probably 35 to 40 per year. The middle column describes the ATP programs. We have 3. They're severe, moderate, early childhood. These are in-service programs for
teachers who possess bachelor's degrees work full-time, usually on a letter of authorization. Primary assignments are working with children who have disabilities during the day, so classes are in the evening, making for a very busy day-long schedule. I don't know how they do it. I teach evening classes, but usually once or twice a week. I don't know how they keep going all day, every day. The ATP programs are governed by USOE and an advisory board. Our role as an institution of higher education is to provide curriculum, provide support, develop collaboration with those agencies. Right column is the distance mild moderate pre-service program. This is pre-service now, not in service. Usually for paraeducators who are working in schools. We recruit them to become teachers. It's offered at regional campuses throughout Utah. Evening courses, again, supervised private and student teaching in local schools. Same curriculum as the on-campus program, same instructors. So they get everything that the on-campus programs get. Again, 30, 35 graduates every 2 years because it's a cohort. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Marilyn and Cindy. Marilyn Likens is a colleague and good friend of mine. I went to graduate school with Marilyn.
Yes, you did. We don't have to.
Just a few years ago, right? And she's also director of the National Resource Center for Paraprofessionals program, and then Cindy will follow her. So,
can you guys hear me? Okay. Actually, we're going to switch it up just a little bit, so I just need your mic.
Cindy's going to lead out. Cindy Myers is also.
So our ATP programs are designed for a specific population, and that population are those people who are working in classrooms on an everyday basis, usually on a letter of authorization, or sometimes we call it that emergency letter. They need to be in classrooms as the teacher of record. So it's a very specific population that we're looking at. Those people are working full-time or part-time. Obviously, they have to have a bachelor's degree before they can do that. Our program is fully accredited if teachers move from state to state that have that license. As states rush to meet the critical shortage of special education teachers, a lot of states looking at alternative preparation designed programs with their state Office of Educations that were valid in their state but didn't transfer. Ours is a fully accredited program. We rely heavily, Fran, you talked a little bit about instructional coaches, and the use of instructional coaches is so embedded in our program and such a critical component as we supervise students. It's a partnership that you'll hear a little bit more about that helps to really tailor the need of a specific teacher, the coaching and direction that they get on the job, as well as helping to build capacity and relationships between our institutions of higher education and the local participating district. So it's a very critical component that we have. Again, because these teachers are working every single day in the classroom, they have the unique opportunity. It's like student teaching for 1.5 to 2 years. They get the information at night and they practice the very next day, and they get feedback about their performance and what needs to happen and changes. That gives us feedback also as a university to know how we can tailor and help meet the unique needs of an individual or an individual district. And so it's very much a collaborative process in that way. Our instructional coaches have the opportunity for additional training, so again, it helps build that capacity and form those relationships. We rely on the knowledge and expertise of our state office and our UPDC here, as well as what districts bring and the value and the wealth of knowledge that people who are working in the field have and can share with us. And I think it's really helped us kind of impact in both directions, teacher training and new induction. It goes beyond just teacher training. it goes towards induction. And I think our state's doing some wonderful things, and I think we've helped. It's been exciting to be a part of that. We also have something that's very unique to us. We have a simulation called Teach Live. You know how pilots have flight simulators? We have classroom simulators called Teach Live. And so our teachers can go in there and crash and burn without harming any students, right? And actually they don't go in and teach crash and burn because we've developed such a program around our Teach Live lab that we can really shape teacher behaviors. And they feel success. They learn not only instructional strategies, but classroom management strategies in a controlled environment where we can help them systematically develop those skills. So it is, it's a great support and another great addition to our program.
Is that outside, this Teach Live?
Is it on site?
Yeah, do they go to your campus and there's
It happens to be, it's actually located here in the Salt Lake Valley at our Salt Lake Center. As districts, if you had the desire to access that, we can help you set up some times to schedule that. There's a fee involved at the other end. The technology of it is very, very interesting. But we would be happy to work with your teachers and provide that opportunity to others if you'd like that. So let us know and we'll schedule that for you.
We coordinated our outfits. I just wanted to point that out because we are ATP. But I'm going to talk about just the high collaborative nature of our program. It's been ongoing for several years and it's collaborative at many levels, but primarily through our advisory board. Our advisory board consists of our program personnel from Utah State, State Office of Education. We have some key UPDC staff that help with some of the trainings, as well as, and the important key members are our directors of special ed or induction specialists, or sometimes the coordinators, instructional coaches from the districts that attend. These happen on a monthly basis, so we can sit and brainstorm around not just student progress, about how to adapt our curriculum to meet district needs, to meet state needs, federal requirements as they evolve over time. It's really helped us get a jump start on talking about the math endorsement, math praxis, all of the challenges that have come down, the Utah core, how are our programs addressing that? We talk about that within our advisory board and then revise our programs accordingly. It's a real strength to our program. We've talked somewhat, Bob talked about the instructional coach training. So all of our ATP students, because they are in the classroom on day one, they need all the training that we give in our program yesterday before they started. So we have, fortunately, district instructional coaches that receive a lot of training and support. We have a week-long intensive training called Running Start, and we have districts provide instructional coaches, essentially cooperating teachers, but instructional coaches that work alongside the ATP candidate for their particular district. Lots of hands-on training and experience in many, many topics within that week of training. The more important piece during that time is that they begin their relationship building prior to the start of school, so that they have time to talk, to understand, to discuss scheduling. And this year we added an extra day on the end of the week where teachers could go with their instructional coaches to their classrooms and actually go to the classrooms, not necessarily on that Friday, but a day of their choosing before school starts to make sure they're up and ready to go. During fall and spring semester, we then do our USU training with our instructional coaches on our USU requirements. So that consists of our direct observations, our checklists, interim reports, as well as our final student teaching. So those are the nitty-gritty parts, the USU requirements, tied to coaching skills that they've learned from our coach training that occurs at the first. I'm going to turn the time over to Barbara.
I think I'm on.
You're on.
I'm good. Oh, there you
I can probably do it backwards too. Okay, I'm Mark Fickle, and I work with the Early Childhood ATP program. If you've been here before, Marlene Deer was standing here last year, but she's in San Francisco, enjoying herself now in retirement. So I'm going to explain what goes on with this program. As Marilyn said, we have basically the similar kind of setup, but I'll just point out the differences that happen with the Birth to 5 group. So our courses are all delivered online, and basically the reason we do that is because we do go statewide. So any district is available or has access to this, and so we broadcast in the afternoons, as they all said. We do have cameras in classrooms. We also can use tapes and uploads, but that's how basically I can watch from my computer and remote in and watch what the students are doing in their classroom. It's, as we said, we've had 24 districts up to this point, and we also currently have some USDB students that will probably be starting with us next year, so that's another district that we'll be adding. Also, the students that are in this are in the Listening and Spoken Language program. It's a master's degree program at Utah State in the Communicative Disorders and Deaf Ed Department for young children who are working with listening and spoken language strategies as opposed to sign. The program began in 2006, and the first graduates were in 2008 because it is a 2-year program. There are some students who do take a slower pace, or if they come in after they've missed the first practicum, so they come in spring, they will have to wait till the following fall to take things in order. But they can take pieces of the program, so some students may take 3 years. There were 8 graduates last year. There were other graduates before that, obviously. There were 45 total. 8 last year. I just wanted to kind of point this out because of the numbers. So there were 8 that graduated last year. There will be 14 that graduate this year, and there will be 25 that graduate next year, or that are on track. So the numbers are going up pretty fast. And so just needed to point that out. Basically, the instructors are university. I do much of the instruction. We also have district professionals who teach several of the courses. We also have district-supported coaches, as Marilyn had said. We do have and Susan can acknowledge this, we do have issues with some of the more rural districts in that when the preschool teacher retires, she leaves and there's nobody there to be a district coach and help support that. So we're trying to work on building a better network across the state for other districts, but most of the other district coordinators told me at the advisory board meeting, well, our people are already too busy. So we'll have to figure that out though for those places where there is only one preschool teacher within a 100-mile radius. We do our coaches training in July along with the teachers. They come to USU campus, and we have a full week of courses, and then the coaches come and join them for a day and a half, and we go through strategies. We're going to shift that out to have some of that happen back in their districts this year. So some of the data to support it, we have data on individual teachers and on child progress outcomes, but I'll just give you some general here. So of the 53 that have were enrolled between 2008 and 2013, 42 of them, when they tried to find them last year for some retention data, 37 of them were still employed as preschool special ed teachers in Utah districts. 2 of the teachers were on maternity leave at the time, so we don't know if they came back. 2 chose not to renew their teaching contracts, and 1 moved up. So for the most part, the program has been keeping people in the classrooms. So they get out and they don't leave. They stay there. So 208 graduates, the 212 graduates, were rated by their advisory board people. This is something we do in all the other ATP programs as well. Checking with their coordinators how things are going, checking with their districts how things are going. The overall satisfaction of last year's graduates was a 3.9 on a 4-point scale, so fairly good. We also asked very specifically on how are your graduates, and this survey is out there now, so if some of you got one from me and you haven't replied, please do. How are they doing on behavior management, on classroom, on data collection, on assessment? So very specific content areas to know what things we need to address more. So basically, as far as linking things with the early childhood course standards, we do reference those in all our classes, as I'm sure all other university programs do. We actually give all the teachers, when they come to the workshop in the summer, they all walk away with their course standard book to take back, and so that then as we walk through classes and as we do assignments, they're required to have them there, and we relate how things compare to that. And basically referenced in all their effective instruction, which is the actual practicum part of the courses. So basically and to reference how we are addressing the state performance plan indicators, most of those for the preschool come from about 6 to 12, so we do talk about the C to B transition. We look at all the other components of this, how it relates back to what they're supposed to be doing in their district, what are the major best practices that they should be following in these particular indicators. If there's, we do have assignments that they need to complete to show us that they understand what they're supposed to be doing here, as well as look at some of that in their portfolio, because all the teachers do, as our on-campus program, put together a student teaching portfolio at the end with examples of all their work in the particular areas that we need to address. Okay. Oh,
okay. All right.
We practice this.
Yes, we did. I know we're doing pretty good here. Hey, one of the things that we really are trying to point out is the different niche that our programs are filling and what's unique about our programs as you look at what's happening across the state through all institutions of higher education. So let me highlight for you just a little bit. For those who are seeking to get an endorsement in special education in severe disabilities, we have some wonderful traditional options, but for teachers who are looking for something a little more non-traditional, the options are fairly limited for them. And our ATP program kind of helps to fill that and offer a variety and an option for teachers who are working full-time during the daytime. So it's a unique kind of a niche that we're fulfilling. Our students do come to a live face-to-face evening coursework here in the Salt Lake Valley. We run out of the our University Salt Lake Center down in the valley. So again, it's a very unique niche that we are filling, and so I hope that you can see that. Currently, we have 129 teachers working in your school districts and charter schools who come through the ATP program, so woohoo for that, huh? Again, we are talking about the standards and how our program is really working to meet those standards. One of the things that we do, it's so linked and embedded throughout our severe ATP program. We use the essential elements to help our teachers write standard-based IEPs. They know what those essential elements are and how they link to Utah's Common Core standards. They're able to understand. And if I can get maybe a hallelujah and an amen, between the new essential elements and the dynamic learning maps, we've got some exciting changes happening for students in our schools who have significant disabilities.
Hallelujah.
Thank you. I thought that I could get that. So we, because our teachers are living it on a daily basis, many of them will be helping to pilot the new DLM starting any minute now. So we're looking forward to that. So by the time our teachers have been through the alternative teacher prep program in severe disabilities, they've used it on a daily basis, and they've had the opportunity to practice under supervision what it means to go into this exciting new world where severe students will have genuine access to core standards. through the essential elements and the dynamic learning maps. So there you go. Again, I just appreciate what opportunities we have to impact our teachers and ultimately the students that we're serving.
If your head isn't whirling by now across all these different programs, just be sure and ask us questions at the end. So now we're talking specifics about our various programs versus more the generalities. But our program, our fall program begins early fall, late summer. So the July running start going into the first part of August is a week-long training that we have. I described a little bit earlier. Then we also deliver face-to-face courses down at on the 5th floor of the Granite Education Center 2 nights a week. People are taking classes from us on effective management practices. That's the Monday night class. On Wednesday, they're taking classes from fabulous UPDC specialists as well as district special ed directors. And that's the assessment and curriculum classes. We currently have 13 districts, 4 charter schools that have participated in our program and are involved. And from 2002, our data goes further back than that. The program's been in place for a long, long time. But major revisions began in 2002. We've trained over 511 ATP teachers, mild moderate teachers that have their license and are considered highly qualified. That's a huge number, and it takes my breath away when I look at it. And when I look to see the requirements we have for these people, when I teach the class on Monday night, they've been teaching all day, and they come to listen to me for 2.5 hours, and then they move on. They don't go home yet. We have people from Boxelder down to Alpine. They stay there for the Teach Live training that they do next for another hour and a half. And so I know I wouldn't sign up for it myself, but it's amazing because when these people finish, they stay in our classrooms or they move up within districts. And my hat is off to them because many times their eyes are like this when I'm teaching my class on Monday night. This is how we address the core standards, both for math and ELA. These are just some of the breakdowns in terms of how they're embedded, just as everybody else said, in their university classes, within all the coursework, within the practica that we do. We are embedding and referencing back to the Utah standards. They're writing comprehensive lesson plans that are tied to those, as well as standards-based IEPs. I'm not going to go into the SPP indicators. They're there, and they're addressed again and embedded throughout all of our coursework in our practica and student teaching. Come on over, Nancy.
Thank you, Marilyn.
How do I turn that down? I don't know. You stand way over there. I'll stand way over here in the center. You're on it, Tom. Tom, the wonderful, is taking care of it. Is that better? So this slide, we created this slide because people are frequently confused about our 2 programs. They wonder why not just one program, why an ATP mild moderate versus a distance. So we thought we would break it down for you in terms of a few key bullets. And so in my program, the ATP mild moderate program, yearly admittance based on district needs. We get calls from districts or from ATP potential candidates saying, there's a job, I've just been hired for it, I've heard about your program, how do I get in? Yearly admittance is what our program's all about.
In the mild moderate distance program, by the way, I'm Nancy Glom.
Oh, Nancy Glom.
It's okay. I'm Nancy Glom, and I direct the mild moderate distance program through Utah State. My program is really designed to make this program accessible for primarily paraeducators who don't have a bachelor's degree. but they want to pursue that and get a license. So we're admitting folks into a cohort every 2 years, and then that allows them that 2-year period to acquire the skills and knowledge that they need to become highly qualified teachers of students with mild moderate disabilities.
So our participants also have to have their bachelor's, their undergraduate, because they're going to be, from day one, pushed into a very intensive, fast-tracked program.
Okay, as I just said, the folks that are in my program do not have a bachelor's degree. Most of them are paraeducators. They're out in a lot of rural and remote districts. They haven't been to school since they graduated from high school 25 years ago. So our program is accommodating that kind of an individual who, again, wants to get a bachelor's degree and licensure.
I'm going to just add to Nancy's because I also love paraeducators, and these paraeducators that come into our program have sometimes been thinking about this for years before they're ready to take the step. So Nancy's program is a great fit for those paraeducators. And it's nice that there are 2 programs available because Weber also has that opportunity, and I love to see that. So as I said, our paraeducators in the mild moderate ATP begin working with students, teaching students on day 1 when the school year starts. Everything that they learn throughout the next 1.5 years is what they needed on that first day. So are they a little anxious? Yes, but they have their instructional coaches, they have their instructors from the courses they meet with on Monday and Wednesday night, and they build a great capacity to support each other throughout this process.
And again, as I was saying earlier, the folks that are in the mild moderate undergraduate distance program are acquiring those skills and that knowledge over that 2-year period of time. They're engaged in practica in their localities and student teaching. It's essentially very similar to our brick and mortar undergraduate program, but we're designing it in such a way that they can still work as paraeducators throughout this experience and acquire what they need to get that bachelor's degree and that license.
Go.
Okay, over to you. And where's the button?
Right there.
You know, you have to do direct instruction. All right. Just a little bit more about the mild moderate distance education program through Utah State. And Bob gave you a little bit of information at the beginning of our presentation, but I want to give you a few more details about it. I was just talking about the fact that it is an undergraduate program. The typical student in my program is a paraeducator, and mean age is about 32. It's actually come down. We're getting more younger people out in the rural and remote localities that get into paraeducator positions and want to get right into a college degree program. But for the most part, I'm dealing with students who have not been in college for a while. They meet the same program entrance requirements, and they complete the same program as students in our on-campus program complete. And we are currently serving 29 Utah school districts. I'm going for 41, but right now, we're in 29 different school districts and charter schools within those localities. Utah core standards drive all of the curriculum in our teacher training programs, distance and on campus. Our students in the mild moderate program right now are required to take as pre-program requirements college algebra, intro to statistics, math for teachers, and there's actually one that's not on there. Earlier, Marty Deaver, who is the Associate Dean at Utah State, mentioned their reading endorsement program and their great reading courses. We're now requiring our students in the mild moderate programs to take one of those reading courses from teaching the elementary ed program, as well as the reading program that they take in our curriculum after they get into it. Students write standards-based IEP goals in the law class that I teach. It's a case-based class,
And all students write in the mild moderate distance program. They're writing English and language arts, IEP goals that have to be connected to the core, and they're writing math IEP goals that are connected to the core, and it relates to a case that they work on. Something that we also do related to this that's kind of similar to Teach Live, and I didn't put it up here, we've developed a virtual world called Teacher Sim. It's kind of like Second Life, if anybody's ever been in that world, without all the noise. And it's a proprietary world that we've developed. So when students come into my program, in the mild moderate distance program, the very first summer they're in the program, they develop avatars. And throughout the program, when we do things like IEP development and collaboration activities, I group them across the state, and they actually go into this virtual world where there's a school building and there are meeting rooms and whiteboards, and they get to engage in those really, really important teaming activities that our campus-based students traditionally do, but in distance ed it's kind of hard to pull off. So that is something that they do in relation to those IEP activities. They develop curriculum-based assessment and instructional units based on the core, and they have to take the middle school math praxis now prior to student teaching. We're requiring that because we really want them to go out with a little bit more under their belt, especially in the area of math. Okay, in terms of the USOE support that we've received over the years, this is how it breaks down in terms of the distance program. USOE funds have provided us initially with some startup assistance. We started in 1995, and we were only in 2 districts at the time. Remember, now we're in 29. So it provided us with some startup assistance. Currently, that support provides us with some program administration support. The 3rd bullet and the 4th bullet, I think, are the most important parts of the distance program, and things that we really couldn't do without that support. We have a full-time dedicated program advisor who you're going to meet in just a little bit, Becky Morgan. She's all over the state, and she's not just working with USU centers around the state. She goes right into districts, and she works with paraeducators. And sometimes she's working with these folks for 3 or 4 years before they ever get into our program, because remember what I said earlier, they don't have bachelor's degrees. They haven't been in school for a very, very long time. So Becky's not just working with people when they're in the program for that 2-year cohort. She's working with them 3, 4 years out. And finally, local mentoring support. The support from USOE allows me to hire graduates of this distance program all over the state to provide on-the-ground, live flesh and blood support for the people that are going through this program. Again, these people are older than the traditional student. They're working full-time. They have families. Sometimes it's an N of 1 at a site. So these mentors are great because they can get out there and they can work with these folks and say, it's okay, you will survive. I did, and I work in this district too. So it's been extremely instrumental in getting our retention rate up and graduating more and more people out of this program. And then USU provides course instructors, the broadcast technology, statewide classroom space. This, by the way, is a IDC. It's through UEN. We broadcast our classes out to Utah State University regional campuses. So students do have to come into a campus, but usually they're not going more than maybe 30 minutes into a center to take the classes that are taught by the same faculty that teach the on-campus classes. And USU will provide travel. Okay, this is a very busy slide. The only reason I have it up there is to illustrate the fact that in 2004, when we did implement that statewide advising, and we have Becky in all these districts, and we put that mentor network into effect, you'll see that graduation rate over on the side. It went way up. We weren't admitting a lot of people before then, and we were graduating more than 50%. Now we're graduating 75, 80%, and we're anticipating in this current cohort that we're going to be graduating 86% of the people that we brought in. To date, I think we have about 230-something people out there since the beginning of the program that are working as mild moderate teachers, primarily in rural and remote areas of the state. Outcomes for the distance program, this is just for 2013, 2014, this last funding cycle. We admitted 44 new program participants into the program. They started last summer. We have 29 graduates out of the previous one who are employed as teachers of students with mild moderate disabilities in Utah schools. And the remainder of that cohort will graduate this year. And those are the indicators that are addressed. Most of the indicators, save the early childhood indicators, really are addressed in our program. And they are linked to specific coursework that's very similar to other coursework that you've been seeing in other programs. But we're very careful that we're looking at how we're addressing that and evaluating whether or not people are really mastering those things. Whoops, that shouldn't be in there. Okay, and now, another USU transition. I'm going to turn the time over to Becky Morgan and Julia Lyman. They're going to talk to you a little bit about our last program.
We're so close to being done. Thank you for hanging in here. We're really close. My name is Julia Lyman. I work with student teachers and a lot of our on-campus students. And another important thing that I get to do is work with the Inter-University Recruitment Grant. We've been so grateful for the funding we have received from the state office because it allows us to find the students that need to fill all of these programs that we've discussed right now. We have identified a couple of very important groups that these students are coming from, and most often they are from our peer tutors in high school, and as we mentioned before, our paraeducators. These people aren't running and breaking down our doors to get into the programs, or else we wouldn't have these critical shortages, right? And I think that they're not doing this because they are apprehensive. So what this grant has allowed us to do is to go to them. We've been able to participate in many of the district's para-appreciation events. If this is something that you are doing in your district or you want to, please contact us because we have been able to make points of contact with people as we come into their areas and say, hey, you are doing such a great job. Your district is recognizing you. Have you thought about a career in special education? They go, yeah, you know what? I have, like Marilyn said, for 3 or 4 years I've been thinking about this. And we're able to say, let us show you what we have to offer. The great thing is, and something that this grant has allowed us to do, is it's not just all Utah State. We're not greedy. I don't know if we've ever been greedy and thought everyone has to come to us because we recognize that we're not the perfect fit for everyone. We've been able to create relationships with Rob and with Fran, with others throughout the state to say, hey, here are the things you told me about your life. Utah State may not be the best fit for you, but go and talk to Fran and Peter. They have a great program. Go and talk to Rob. Here is their contact information. We are here to get the teachers get the candidates into teaching positions. That is our #1 goal. It's not to be #1 at the top of the state, Utah State. It is to provide teachers an opportunity to get their degree so that they are in your districts and providing the instruction that is so necessary. So we will come out to your districts. Just contact us and we will be there. We do work with many of the advisors. We have great relationship across the state and we're continuing to develop those so that we can give multiple pieces of information out to these candidates that are interested in the program. One thing that we have developed that is fantastic is a website that Becky's going to talk about that gives them great access to information.
We showed this to you folks last year. For those of you who haven't seen it, I'm going to have to rely on Julia to handle technology because I just boss people around as an advisor colleague, apparently. But this website is a Utah Special Ed program. So what we wanted to do was to create a one-stop shop for folks who are considering teacher education, special education licensing in Utah. And I really, at this point in time, want to take just a moment and give a great big thank you to Peggy Milligan. Peggy's not here today that I have seen, but her leadership has been instrumental in this effort, this collaboration. I'm sure at times for her it was like herding cats. success as she brought folks from Utah State, from the U of U, we were together all collectively to address what is now a critical shortage and what is projected to be even more of a critical shortage within the next few years. We wanted, as a group, to create an opportunity for students to get information, not from one advisor talking really quickly to them, or hearing a bend from a colleague who attended one program, but really to have the opportunity to compare apples to apples options for licensing within the state. And this program does that, this website does that. What we have done is follow a standard format that outlines an overview of each individual program, admission criteria across programs, opportunities for licensure and additional endorsement. And students can sit down, at home in their PJs and collect this information, and then they have a point of contact at each of those institutions. And I encourage almost everybody I talk to shop around. Licensure is hard. Students feel best and complete programs when they're in a program that best meets their individual needs and circumstances, and they're confident that they have selected the right program for their life situation. If there's one thing you walk away with today from Utah State, it will make you look smarter. Utah SPED programs. This outlines every single opportunity within the state of Utah to obtain licensure in those areas that they're interested in. So that's all you have to remember. We could have done this presentation in just a few minutes, but no, it does have an overview. Again, one thing that we are continuing to do, what's different from last year, is we've been able to work in tighter collaboration with SUU. We can provide that information. We've added that to our website, and we're continuing to build relationships with our two-year feeder institutions so that we're able not just to recruit paraeducators, but others who are looking at pre-education majors. And we have designed and will be putting up on the website articulation agreements, those transfer agreements, so students can be meaningful in the coursework that they take at each of the institutes to whichever school they're looking at. So again, we don't want this to take the place of advisement, but we'd like for students to be able to come back to something to refer back to it. It's the first of the year that Utah State became aware of a new board rule. It's Rule 177-502-3.5 that came out of the State Board of Education that really provides some interesting, and I think eventually will be extremely helpful set of admission criteria to teacher education licensure programs within the state. They have come up with, and I can't think of a word other than dictate right now, mandated a minimum set of criteria for each individual who is coming into at the point of entrance into teacher education. I think that this is a fantastic move. It creates a level admission criteria across universities, but our students right now, if they're not made aware of this, may be caught off guard and underprepared for application. The rule goes into effect August 1st. For programs that run as a cohort-based, like my mild moderate program, I'm in a little bit of a panic and scrambling, mostly because I want to get the information out. The requirements are not unrealistic. It's where we want to go. All of us know we need better qualified teacher education applicants in order to come through our programs and end up as a better qualified teacher. But I am a little nervous given the higher GPA requirement of ACT scores for folks who have been in college for quite a while and maybe caught off guard that they need a minimum of a 19 on a math ACT score. So what we are so hopeful of is another year of funding to be able to go out and continue our inter-university recruitment efforts, again, do outreach, continue to make sure that we have teachers coming through the pipeline and that we aren't experiencing a break in that flow simply because of these requirements, because again, they are good and valuable requirements. They're just coming so quickly that we want to make sure we have outreach. If you have questions, please, feel free to refer a student to myself. I often don't have the perfect answer for a student, but I can put them in point with the perfect contact. And again, we're just so incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to work with you and work with the other institutions here in the state and continue to see the quality of our teachers and teacher ed candidates improve over time. So I think we're done, and we'll hand off to Bob now.
Becky, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Before you go to BYU? Amongst all these things, I recently had a woman come. She would be post-bac. She wanted to pursue special education. Who would I, in that situation, who would I have? Should she just go to the Utah Sped?
You can do that, or have her talk with me. I would be happy to, answer a phone call and field and walk a student through this. I do a lot of that. In fact, Michelle has referred folks to me, and I've kind of passed them along down the line. I think the process is intimidating. We had hoped to take that out. I don't know that we can take it all the way out. We do track and follow up, and so if those folks are referred to me, I'll give them a call back in 30 days or an email and say, did you find what you were looking for? And often, it's after that interaction to say, no, I'm stuck. I say, well, good, let's brainstorm again. Let's come back together. What point of this was, the barrier for you, and we can get to the end of that. We don't want to replace that because we realize that that's so critically important to have that follow-up, but put them in contact with me, show them the website. I'd be happy to field those calls. Great, thank you.
Here are some summary points. I'm not going to go over them. A lot of different teacher education programs, each tailored to different needs. And here's contact information for us. Get in touch with us if you would like. If you would like a handout of our teacher prep programs, I have these available. So with that, I think I'll end. Let's hear applause for that. Back to Siraj. Thanks. Oh, wait.
Let's hear it for all our universities. Thank you so much. We have posted all these presentations on our updc.org/teacher-prep. You can just go to the UPDC website and search Symposium, and they'll all come up. Thank you again for being here. Safe journey today. Have a great Valentine's Day, and enjoy the 3-day weekend if you get one. If you don't, I wish you had a 3-day weekend. See you, everybody. Thank you so much.